Chris here and welcome back to my second video in China. I'm in Xi'an and this time around it's the OPPO Find X Ultra. So it's the new flagship with some very powerful camera hardware tuned by Hasselblad, so they still have that partnership. So the rear camera is an impressive setup. We have a 1-inch type main camera, so they have kept that unlike some other brands. 50 megapixel ultra wide, 50 megapixel 3 times and 6 times periscopic zoom cameras. A really nice AMOLED flat Quad HD Plus screen, 32 megapixel camera at the front. And this, I just wanted to point out, is a trip that has been sponsored my accommodation and my travel to get here by OPPO, but I am not being paid for this video at all. So all of my opinions expressed in this hands-on are my own. Right, let's take a look at what we get included with the Find X8 Ultra. So here we have a case, and it's a clear TPU style case, so great to see that this is included. They're not doing a Samsung or an Apple by removing things, and a lot of other brands still don't include cases either because they want you to buy that separately. Obviously, we have our phone. I'll show you that in just a minute. Our charger, so it's their 100-watt Super VOC charger. It's a decent size, very small, so it's using GaN technology. We have our SIM tray tool, and then the cable right here, which is Type A to Type C. So that is what we get included. It's a periscopic camera, which is 6 times optical zoom with optical image stabilization with this. Now, it's 50 megapixels. All of the cameras on the rear are 50 megapixels there. The ultra wide, the main camera is still 1 inch. I'm really happy to see that. And there's a 3 times periscopic camera as well. So you have a great zoom range, especially for portraits. I like 3 times for portraits, and we've got that. You can get some interesting portraits too with the 6 times, as you'll see later with my camera samples. So it's like this frosted white version I have here. It does, because of the matte finish to it, resist fingerprints exceptionally well. I can't really see them at all. So if you want the cleanest looking color out of all of the colors that I've seen and had a look at, this is the one to get. You get the silver metal frame. So the buttons, they are made out of metal. They've got a really good feel to them, and this is flat, so it's not curved on the rear. It's Gorilla Glass that it is using, and right here we've got a color spectrometer. So this is especially important when it comes to getting the skin tones right, which OPPO's really focused on quite a bit with this. Now, it does weigh, it's not a bad weight, 226. It's certainly not the lightest, but considering it's a 6.82-inch screen that it has size, I think it's good. I'm really impressed with this build quality. It's such a well-made, solid, put-together phone, and we've got, you'll see here, a flat screen, 120 hertz. It's a really nice panel in here. So LTPO technology that it is using, so it will scale up that frequency up to 120 depending on when it needs. But with static images, it can really drop that refresh rate right down to save on the battery life. ColorOS 15, powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite. We've got 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage for the base starting out model, which is priced, I think, really good at about 800 euros. Of course, you need to import one in. This is a China-only release. Unfortunately, not going global. That is a real shame there. So down the bottom, we have our Type-C port that supports video out. You can see the antenna lines, loudspeaker, microphone. It does take 2 nano SIMs. Up the top here, we have some more microphones, IR transmitter, and a secondary loudspeaker. Now, the fingerprint reader, optical, works very well. I've never had it fail on me. Once I set it up, that's it. It always works. It is super quick and accurate. 32 megapixel camera here at the front. And the screen resolution, this is 1440p. Well, it's actually Quad HD plus the resolution. And it's really sharp. You can't see any pixels. Very bright, gets up to 2500 nits, so it can be made out in direct sunlight. With our refresh rate, you can force it to 120 Hz. There's no 90 Hz option, unfortunately, or the auto select, which is default. Screen resolution, default is on just standard, which is just full HD+, but I've set it to Quad HD+. Do you notice a big difference between that? At normal kind of phone viewing distances, you do not. Now, the touch accuracy, that was my fault just then, is very good, and I've noticed it responds to touch and the gestures all really well, so not a problem. You have their Ultra Vision engine. I don't tend to enable these because the image sharpener and the color boost I find Well, it might seem great to some people. To me, it seems to be a little artificial looking, so I just leave it as it is off. You have the adaptive tone and, of course, eye comfort, and you've got the smart eye comfort mode, bedtime mode too as well, which is all pretty standard there, filtering out the blue light, which is great. Now, the screen may have a bit of a blue tint to it in my videos here. I'm not in my studio, so it's a bit difficult to get white balances and things correct and looking as it should. Now, they managed to slim down the phone. It's 8.8 millimeters for an ultra spec phone with the camera hardware it's packing, especially that 1-inch sensor. It's very good to have the thickness and as thin as it is for this style of phone. So we've got a shortcut button right here on the left side, and then we have that touch sensitive button for your camera. So you can use that if you double tap it to launch the camera straight away, which you can see I've gone into, and then you can use this with a touch sensitive button to zoom in and out, so you can control all of the cameras because you go over to the ultra wide and it'll swap depending on what kind of zoom level you do want to whatever camera. So once I go over 3 times, it'll swap over to the 3 times optical zoom camera. Once I go over 6, it is then using the 6 times optical zoom camera. So the battery is huge in this phone, 6,100 milliamp hours. And I think that's really suiting the style of phone this is, because it's got some pretty potent camera hardware in here, really bright, vibrant screen, quad HD resolution. There's a lot of demanding tech in this, and it's held up really well in my testing of using the camera and just recording a lot of video, taking a lot of photos. I got it down to 34% after a solid day of using it, and it held up well. I think better than others would have. So we have 50-watt wireless charging, and the wired charging is 100 watts. It only takes 35 minutes, so it's exceptionally quick there. Very good. Now, ColorOS, a lot of you are probably familiar with ColorOS. I think it's a good UI we have, and it's of course based off Android 15. Now you probably want to know, will it run Google Play and Google Play services? It will. Now the services are all in there. You go through the settings and you go in and just enable Google services, and then what I did from there was install Google Play Store. So you find an APK file from one of those mirror sites like apkmirror.com, and you install that and you log in. You actually log in through the phone to get it up and running, and you can see I've got everything, so it's all working fine. 5G is working. No problems here in China, and I believe the modem should work in Europe with most 5G bands we have out there in 4G, but I'll be testing that when I do get home to Spain because, of course, I'm currently in China. Now, it's really quick. The optimization is great. I've got the 16 gigabytes of RAM with this version, so it's no slouch, and there is some virtual caching we can set through the settings too as well when you do go through and look at this. Now the storage, I've got 512 with this, and I'll show you the speeds of that shortly, but it is excellent. It's very, very fast, and you can see standard ColorOS settings in here. Most of us know Android, so I won't dive deep into any of the stuff here. We do have AI on board, and really I haven't noticed too many things that would put me off from getting this, apart from when you first get the phone, which I'll show you here, that you'll see that you're going to have this. So there's a bit of Chinese bloat while all the different pre-installed applications, so you have to go through and clean that up, but really everything can be removed, and you can get rid of the cards here too as well and change that, which I haven't done yet. You don't have to have all this stuff. You can see a lot of that is not relevant to me. I'm not going to be able to understand it. It's all in Chinese, but that's an easy fix there. So just go back to this. The Antutu score set to the performance mode is very good, getting over 2.5 million points. And we have very good storage speeds here, just over the 3,600 mark there for sequential reads, 3,400 for the writes, and good random access. So it's a very smooth, fast, well-optimized ROM. We're on the first firmware, but there's a firmware update coming soon that's going to add 4K 120 frames per second, which of course the phone is able to do. And it does have a wide variant level 1 cert. So DRM, Netflix, and you want to see Disney Plus, Amazon Prime Video, will all be working at 4K 60. Well, sorry, 1080p, full HD at least, that you'll be able to get with this, which is good. So you're going to encounter really, I think, no serious issues if you're going to import one of these in from China. The only real thing I can think of is to make sure you have the frequencies that you need with your carrier that this phone is going to have. That's the only thing. So you can get 5G, so you can get at least your LTE speeds too that you want, and then it will be smooth sailing from then onwards. So especially if you're in the US and you plan to get one of these, you want to make sure that you're going to have the bands that will work with, say, AT&T, or you're on with T-Mobile, Verizon, whatever. So there is a game that you can see I've got installed here, Genshin Impact. Unfortunately, it's 32 gigabytes, and I'm struggling here with the VPN to get this to download quickly. But we know what that's going to be like. Snapdragon 8 Elite performance is very good. Now, I have noticed that when we're using the cameras a lot of us did see this in our testing and going around various sightseeing spots, that using these cameras and having the screen on, of course, it's being pushed to the maximum with the brightness and the hardware, that the phone was getting quite hot. This is the only downside that I've discovered to the Find X8 Ultra so far, that using the cameras, it will get quite hot around the frame. And if you're recording continually a lot of 4K video, it will heat up. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is a hot chip, and I'll have to check this out later on when I start to use this a lot more, because this is only day 2 that I've had the phone. This is why it's a first impressions, and this is not a review. Before I get into those all-important camera samples to show you what it's capable of, let's have a quick look here in the camera app. So you can see we've got an ultra-wide, the main camera, all of them being 50 megapixels, the 3x optical zoom camera, and this 6x one right there. Now you can use the top button, as I pointed out before, to adjust your zoom. And I like to go up to probably about 10 times max. That's all I would do. I don't really like to go over that, because I notice the image really starts to degrade, because of course it's going to have a lot of digital zoom there. So we have the modes on the side here, super macro, that you can enable. You can have that to have a natural blur or full clarity if you wanted that. So it's good to set those options there. Exposure can be controlled, all of those settings too. You have the filters that you're able to set. There's a lot of those in there that if you're curious to try them out, then it's good fun, because you have a lot of, this one's a film look, fresh. They have emerald, clear, and all sorts of others. But I normally keep it and will for my tests and samples on the original, the default setting. You have the portrait modes. You can set, of course, what kind of background blur you want, the levels there, as setting our aperture, okay, that it's going to be simulating with that. So you can keep it onto 5, put it on really weak. You can set it like F11, and it's pretty self-explanatory, all of that stuff there. Now, beautifying's there, but I have turned that to 0. There's still maybe a little bit of skin smoothing present, but I'll be taking a look at that. And there is a camera comparison I'm working on with this. So we have a lot of other settings in here. You can see the high-res mode, night, and document scanner and whatnot. Now, video, this will be, when the patch comes out, going up to 4K 120 that we get with the rear cameras, which is very good, especially if you want to slow that down and get a bit of slow motion footage. And I'll be testing that later when we do get that. We have the master mode right there, you can see. And there are some other settings in portrait. It's pretty self-explanatory there. Oh, and the other thing, can we set, when we go into the master mode, if you want RAW? Yes. So we've got JPEG, Max mode, RAW, and RAW Max 2 settings within this. Now note that with our camera, the frame rates that we can get with 4K and even 1080p, there's no 24 frames per second. For those of you that like to have that cinematic look, you want to record at 24 frames per second, you'd have to use a third-party app for that. And it does have camera API support, full camera API support there. So that will be possible with other applications, but not with the stock app. So later on with that patch, as mentioned, we're going to have the 120 frames per second. Dolby Vision, that is there. So you can shoot this. And what about 8K? Well, unfortunately, that's something that OPPO just doesn't seem to want to add just yet. I know that most users probably don't want 8K. I like 8K myself to record video of my children, because I think it's going to be great for future proofing when maybe in 10 years time or 20 years time, everyone has 8K TVs, and it's just going to hold up a lot better, I think, recording footage in 8K. But that's just me personally. Most people won't be too fussed about that, but I would love to see OPPO add 8K video support, like other brands do have, Samsung, Vivo, and whatnot, the other Android flagships and Ultra phones. And let's have a look at those cameras now with our OPPO Find X8 Ultra. So this is the front camera, which is 32 megapixels. You can shoot video with electronic image stabilization at 40 frames per second 4K or 60 frames per second 4K. And it does look very good, this quality. It's nice and steady, that electronic image stabilization. Rear video now, this is our ultra-wide camera, 50 megapixels. All of those cameras on the rear are 50 megapixels. Using electronic image stabilization right now, looking at this 600-year-old bell tower. This is now the main camera, which is using a combination of optical and electronic image stabilization. 1-inch type sensor. Great to see that we still have this with OPPO's Find X8 Ultra flagship. And 3x periscopic zoom camera. See that transition? Seems to be quite smooth between the lenses, and the stabilization looking very good here with the periscopic camera. Now this is the 6x optical zoom periscopic camera. Again, good stability considering I was just walking then. Back to the main camera, brisk walk, seeing how steady this is. And the ultra wide, again with its electronic image stabilization. So over to their samples, probably why you're here. Now, portrait photography. These two samples I'm showing you now, I just took randomly some street photography and they came out fantastic. And now under some, different lighting conditions already set up by OPPO for us to test out. However, the difficult lighting conditions, and this is where you see that the 3x and 6x zoom with that color spectrum sensor do a fantastic job of the exposure, skin tones, and overall impressive portrait photography I've found. Generally, the zoom performance I've found to be impressive, the stabilization, really steady, and that does help deliver some amazing results with these sample photos. And no, these are not official press images or anything like that. These are all images that I've just randomly shot myself, and the macro shots you're looking at right now do come out excellent with plenty of detail, good colors, and this too as well using the portrait mode, good separation of our subject there, background blur, and overall, I think you can't really go wrong with these cameras. And remember, we're on the first firmware here. Even low light performance is looking great, but is it going to be the absolute best out there? Well, I'm working on a camera comparison, and I hope to have that out in a few days, and we'll see just how it does fare against the competition. But I can give you this early little preview here. This is the X200 Pro, which I do think is one of the best when it comes to photography, especially low light, against our Find X8 Ultra. Now, of course, the Vivos had a lot of time for firmware updates and tweaks and improvements, whereas the Find X8 Ultra just came out. So we'll see. I think it's going to be very hard to topple that one, and especially with the X200 Ultra coming out very soon, it might be a hard ask for OPPO, but we'll see what happens as the firmware matures. So I'm loving this flat screen, the 120 Hz, 1440p resolution, well, full Quad HD Plus. Now this is a great Quad HD Plus screen, and I'm really enjoying the speakers. They're very good. The performance and general use of this phone has been absolutely fantastic. So what I'll do is just give you a very short sample here of what you can expect out of these speakers, but they've got a bit of bass to them. They sound rich. They don't lack in volume either. And my first impressions of them are that they are excellent speakers, and overall the phone just is, so far, I think, one of the best in terms of hardware that I've seen coming out of China and of these Ultra phones. But here's that audio sample now of the speakers, and I'll turn that volume up to maximum. With the Snapdragon 8 Elite and the Ultra branding, well, does this phone actually live up to that? Well, we'll find out in this comparison/review. Okay, so pricing, it is approximately around 800 euros to buy one of these here in China. Of course, when you get it in Europe, it's not going to be that price. It'll probably be roughly, you could say, around 950 or maybe even 1,000 euros once you add import tax on top and the shipping costs and the small cut that, of course, some of the guys that will be selling this, the retailers will be selling this and shipping it out, will add on that. But I still think for that, you are getting some absolutely fantastic hardware. The build quality, the screen, the IP ratings that this does have, 50-watt wireless charging, 100-watt wired charging in just 35 minutes for that very big 6,100 milliamp hour silicon carbon battery. Fantastic. Performance, very good. The only things I've noticed so far in my time testing it out, as I mentioned, that when you use the camera a lot, and this happens with other phones too, by the way, the screen and out in direct sunlight is on with a full maximum brightness and some pretty demanding hardware. It gets warm, it gets quite hot to the touch, and quite a few of us have noticed this. This is the only thing, apart from the obvious downside, that of course this has not gone global. And don't worry, we've already moaned and complained to OPPO ourselves and said, come on, why is this not going global? Because I think it's going to do really well compared to the likes of, say, Apple and Samsung phones out there and the Xiaomis and the Vivos and whatnot. But I will have a camera comparison that I'm working on right now, but that probably won't be out until about, say, the 16th or the 17th of April, because I really need to look at those photos on a very large monitor, not on my small screen laptop here. But I'm working on that. It's coming to see how do these cameras really fare against the competition? Because so far, what I've seen, they are really impressive. I'm liking that optimization we've got, especially with the skin tones, with the portrait photos. The stitching looks fantastic. Low light performance looks good. The video is looking excellent, but the transition over the cameras can sometimes have different color science and not be as smooth as what it could be. But you've got to remember, it's the first firmware, so I'm sure optimizations are coming. We're going to have the 4K 120 Hertz patch coming very shortly too as well. So thank you so much for watching my first impressions and hands-on unboxing of the OPPO Find X8 Ultra.